Audio Track 3 Piercing the Elastic Limit, an Epic Fable by Howard Loring, read by the author. Copyright 2012 by Precognition Press, LLC. Chapter 2 The Passageway's Path. Beyond the portal, Caesar found a large, well-lit hallway. Looking to the right, he saw nothing but a few torched sconces blazing along the thickly mortared, carefully laid rock wall. Looking to his left, he saw much the same decor, yet in this direction the girl stood a few paces away, her smile intact. "Are you hungry, Caesar?" she asked in a soft voice. "Famished," he answered, returning her smile. "And thirsty too, I'm afraid." Then he asked of her, "Do you always make your entrance thus?" A larger grin crossed her pretty face. She turned and extended her arm, beckoning him. He fell in beside her, and the two walked down the hall. "You may eat first," she informed him, "or see the Oracle now, and food will be brought to you. However, if you choose now, we must hurry. Time is short." Caesar pulled up at this input, arrested by the unexpected remark. A worried look crossed his usual stately but dour features. It was distressing news. "I was unaware of any such constraint," he muttered, while looking down at the polished stone floor. "Dear me, and I've come so far." He glanced up to her and added, "And I've a rather busy schedule, you know." This statement caused her to laugh aloud. She shook her head to reassure him. Again she held her arm out, and they continued down the hallway. "You may have all the time you need with the Oracle," she instructed. "Any number of sessions are permitted. Yet he tires often and must rest himself. He's tired now, I fear, and he will need to rest soon." Caesar could relate. He wasn't getting any younger himself, but he wished, as always, to make both the prudent and proper decision. How lengthy a wait was his question. "Not very," she said, "and if you eat now, your session later will be longer." Again Caesar stopped, this time to consider. He had removed his heavy armor, but still wore his wrist and shin guards. He touched his dirty tunic. "Is a bath possible?" he inquired. She nodded and answered him. "We also have clean garments laid out." This time Caesar extended his arm. She laughed once more. They resumed their transit, and near the end of the hall she indicated a roughly hewn door. "Agrippa will be hungry as well," he said to her. Again she nodded and said, "His needs will be well looked after, do not fear." "Splendid," Caesar replied, and he pushed open the door. But before he went in, he looked into her large green eyes and added, "You'll find, my dear, there's little in life that I do fear." He then entered the room beyond. It was spacious also. The sunken tub was large in the Roman style, and the water therein the perfect temperature. He found that the clean clothes laid out near by, simple but elegant, fit him perfectly. Outside by the stream, Agrippa sat on a boulder, studying the rock face before him, as if it were an army in the field, drawn up in battle formation. He had already tested its strength by tapping all areas of the surface with the heel of his sword hilt. This had yielded no positive result, the stone being solid and sure. At last he stood, and once more drew his weapon. He stepped to the slab, and at close range examined its edge. He began to dig with the tip of his sword, probing the soil surrounding the huge stone. After a bit he stepped back, and plunged his tool into the dirt in earnest. Pulling it free, he stabbed again, then again. Soil began to dribble, and soon a small hole appeared next to the portal. "Such action is useless," a voice said. Without looking, he knew it was the girl. He turned, and there she was, standing across the stream as before. "And yet you appear just as I commence my excavation," he observed. "Are you not hungry?" she inquired, her smile returning. She extended her arm, pointing. Beyond the creek, just a few paces behind Agrippa, now sat a large, grass-woven basket upon a blanket. "A picnic?" he asked her. "And will you not join me? Are you now not just a beautiful distraction to pry me from my digging?" She didn't respond to this observation. She didn't need to. It mattered not in any case. "Where's Caesar?" he demanded. "He's preparing for his audience with the Oracle," she replied. "Yet your wait will not be a long one, rest assured. Eat or no, as you wish." It was true that he was hungry. He moved to the basket and kicked off the lid with the armored toe of his boot. It was crammed full of food and drink. "You're privy to Caesar's agenda?" he asked. "Suppose he wishes to speak with the Oracle at length? What's to become of poor me then?" "Such is not a valid concern," she explained, "for time itself is held fast within the Oracle. Caesar may stay a week or a year. For you it will not register as such. For you only a short interval will pass, as I said before." "And I should believe this," he retorted. "Just eat without concern, and marry the day away. Perhaps a bath in the stream, as Caesar suggested." "As you wish," she repeated, her smile no longer present. She seemed perturbed by his insistence, yet she persisted in her duty. She always did. "He's in no danger," she tried to reassure him. "The Oracle is always benign. Its secrets are just well guarded, that's all. It must be so." This discourse, at last, seemed to mollify Agrippa. It was evident that the Oracle held great powers, but should he assume them evil? And he could always resume the dig later, if he wished. Not that it would do him any good. He bent and pursued the basket's inventory. What he saw was impressive. All of his most esteemed dishes, in fact, and he had a hard time choosing what to savor first. He plopped a plump game bird's drumstick into his mouth, just to get it out of his way, and then continued to investigate the contents of his new larder. While rustling about the depths of the large basket, he looked up to further converse with the girl, but found her once more vanished. He slowly stood, his hands now on his hips, the morsel still in his mouth. Then he spat it out, and once more turned to the sword that was yet protruding from the waiting embankment. After dressing, Caesar exited through the same door, but was surprised to find there not the hallway as before, but a banquet room laden with all his favorite fare. The food was well presented, plentiful and delicious, the wine of excellent vintage, and the drinking water cold and refreshing. He sampled a small bit of most everything, and ended stuffing himself beyond the usual. As he sat digesting, wondering how long it would be until the oracle was ready to receive him, he glanced to the open doorway. The girl was standing there, smiling as always. She extended her arm, indicating that the time for his audience was indeed nigh. "I guess it's true, after all," he observed. She cocked her head in question. Rising, he said, "You are the only guide to the Oracle of Munda." Exiting the room, he found that the hallway had returned. The two retraced their earlier steps to the point in the wall where the portal was embedded. Beyond the archway was a gaping maw, just as dark as before. "It's not far," she said. "He'll let you know when it's time to go. Return here." Before he proceeded, Caesar took her hands in his. Again he looked her in the eye. He was pleased. "Thank you," he said. "You've been very kind. The best guide that I've ever had." Hearing this proclamation, her smile returned. He was gallant beyond measure, to be sure. Upon his re-emergence, he would find her waiting. Caesar released her, and turned to the entrance. Taking a second to compose himself, he stood straighter while gazing into the darkness. Then he drew a deep breath and entered the portal. Outside, Agrippa considered his options. They were limited. The hole that he had chiseled away was now large enough to stand in, but despite his determined labor, it yielded no entrance to the mysterious oracle. He had thought of riding back to enlist the cohort's help, but quickly dismissed the idea. His duty compelled him to stand by Caesar, and he didn't wish to be absent if the great man did return. The bizarre situation was beyond him, and that realization rankled his Roman pride. As he sat thinking, he ate. The food was tasty enough, the wine full-bodied, but he was in no mood to enjoy either. Both stuck in his throat. He glanced to the stream. The water was idling by, constant but in no hurry to reach its destination. Perhaps a bath was a good idea, after all, he reasoned. He removed his wrist guards and tossed them away. Bending to grapple with the ones on his shins, he noticed the bundle of clean clothes, folded and waiting for him on the opposite bank. He sighed, in retrospect, knowing that he should have seen this one coming. Next, the commander stood and reached for the buckles of his heavy breastplate. Caesar's transit through the portal this time yielded a different result. There was no abrupt change as before. as if only walking from one room to another. Instead, the silent passageway seemed elongated, a darkened tunnel with a lighted opening in the distance. The great man picked his way towards the doorway, the light growing larger with every step. Soon enough he stood on the threshold looking in. Beyond he saw a small, cramped apartment containing many opulent appointments, and a seated figure behind a large desk. "Welcome, citizen," the figure, an old man, said, looking up. "My apologies. I hear I've kept you waiting." "Not at all," was Caesar's reply. He stepped in as the seated man stood. "My stay has been most pleasant, I assure you," he added, "but I confess that I am anxious to begin my audience with the great Oracle of Munda." "And so you shall, Gaius Julius," said the oracle, as he indicated a seat for the newcomer. Caesar crossed to the old man, but did not sit. He was drinking in all aspects of the scene before him, gazing about at the many cluttered accoutrements it held. Even the ceiling was heavy with hanging objects, hooked into place for easy access, he presumed. "My skills are many," said the old man, "but it seems that housekeeping is not one of them." He laughed at this self-effacing remark and sat, pointing again to a small couch before his desk. While still looking around with interest, the newcomer at last took his place. "Now, what is your question, great Caesar?" the oracle asked of him. "Have you framed it yet? Or must the two of us discuss it first? We have the time." "I'm afraid that I have many questions," stated Caesar. "Am I allowed only one?" "There are many questions in life, it's true," answered the oracle. "Yet the smaller ones are but a mirror of the larger, and the larger ones, without exception, can be weeded through to reach the one that's uppermost in life. Only you can decide this, Caesar. Only you can choose what you truly wish to know." "I see," observed the great man, considering. "But as I've said," the old one continued, "any time needed to frame the proper question will be provided. Your existence outside these walls will be waiting, rest assured. The world beyond is frozen, fixed in place, while you reside here. It is always so." Caesar nodded at this. He sat back into the couch's cushions and relaxed. He always felt better about his decisions when they arrived unrushed. He still had many questions relating to the oracle himself, but he put them aside. On this occasion he wasn't the one in charge. The magic here was very impressive, and he was content to indulge. "Let's begin," said the oracle. He opened a large book sitting on his desk that was resting upon a tilted stand. As he turned the pages, Caesar observed that each was filled with columns of tightly packed black inkings. Caesar had seen bound books before at the great library in Alexandria, but they were rare. Scrolls were the commoner fare. Clay tablets, encased in wooden frames, were more so. used daily for short letters or dispatches. "Ah, yes," said the oracle, finding what he was searching for. "The Julii, here we are, among the oldest families of Rome. You should be proud, Caesar." "I am, of course," replied the great man, but he knew his prestigious pedigree already. Now what he wanted was insight into the future. The long-dead past, no matter how glorious, would do him no good. "Yet only 3 consuls in all that time," observed the old man, pouting. "Not a great number, given near 500 years of living in Rome, would you agree? Not much of a driven family there, would you say?" Caesar was not amused by such a condescending tone, and under normal circumstances he wouldn't have put up with it. But this audience was far from the norm in many ways. He forced a smile. "3 also on my mother's side," was his dry comment to the seated figure. "But look at you," said the old man, as he marked his place with a thick red ribbon and closed the book. "You are driven, have always been. Why?" "You're the oracle," said Caesar. "You tell me." The old man leaned forward and interlocked his fingers, resting his elbows on the desk. He looked Caesar squarely in the face. The great man's eyes, famous for their jet black color, looked back at him, waiting. "You, Gaius Julius Caesar, became responsible for your family at 14, after your father died," said the oracle. "Yet you gave up a good-paying Jupiter priesthood to become a praetor, which paid much less. Next a tribune, then a quaestor, then Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of your Roman religion." "That was long ago," countered Caesar, beginning to have an uneasy feeling. "Then governor of outer Iberia," noted the old man. "Not far from here, in fact. Then proconsul, yet that wasn't enough. Next, governor of all Cisalpine Gaul." "I like northern Italy," said Caesar, trying to hold his growing temper in check. "Then Transalpine Gaul became yours," continued the old man. "Now the money really rolls in. Soon you're strong enough to take on Pompey himself." "Pompey started the war," protested Caesar, jumping to his feet. "I had no other course." He began to pace about, as was his habit when disturbed. This was not the calm audience that he had hoped for, far from it. "Yet you became dictator," was the oracle's reply. "I resigned the dictatorship after 11 days, Caesar shot back. "Does your tome not say so? Perhaps you should look it up again." He crossed to the desk and spun the book around. He grabbed the ribbon and opened the vast volume. The pages, before so full, were now empty. Caesar was baffled. He turned a leaf, but the sheaves before him were also blank. He thumbed through several inches of sheets, but all were void of any ink. "Finished?" asked the old man. Caesar returned to his seat, chastised. The oracle leaned back in his chair, his fingertips now touching. "You were yet consul after your resignation," he resumed, "and still waged your war that continues to this day. The cowering and spineless Senate next elected you dictator for a year, then for 10, of which you have 9 to go. By now you've been consul 4 times. Is all this not enough for you, mighty Caesar?" Caesar glared at the old man, who sat unmoved by the display. Why was he pushing so hard, Caesar wondered. What was his strategic purpose? The oracle took pity on him. His purpose, after all, was to help. He leaned forward once more and tried again, his voice now holding a friendlier tone. "When did you first hear of the Oracle of Munda?" he asked the great man. "Many years past," was the answer, given after a few seconds. "I was taken prisoner in the Aegean and held for ransom. I was just a lad." "Yes," said the old man, "you were a strapping 25-year-old. But who told you of me? Who started you on this quest, Caesar?" "There was a boy that hailed from Iberia," he answered, "a slave of the pirates. He was the one who told me of your wisdom, your heavy insight. We often spoke at length about the great powers at your command." The oracle nodded at this recollection. It was so. He remembered it well. "I was that boy," he told Caesar, "but I was no pirate's slave. It was a ruse." Caesar now sat motionless, immobilized by the words. Could this be true? How was it possible? "I knew even then," explained the oracle, "that one day this war would lead you here to Spain. So you see, all those years ago I planted the seed. But in the end, you were the one who chose to come. Why?" Caesar could not answer. He tried, but the words would not form. He now realized that this oracle was far more powerful than he had ever imagined, and that unforeseen knowledge was a heavy burden. The great man had visited many oracles before, of course, in Rome and elsewhere during his far-reaching travels, but they had been nothing like this. True, each of them had claimed the sanction of one god or another, but none had ever been themselves divine. This time, given this news, he wasn't so sure. Also, other oracles were basically just a business, open to anyone who would pay the required offering. But this one was not open to all comers. Long ago the Iberian boy had explained that Munda's oracle was unique, for it alone would choose to whom it granted audience. After learning of its prowess, in his youth Caesar had dreamed for a time of such an encounter, viewing it as a sign, a validation of his own importance. However, his resulting hectic life had put an end to those ancient musings. But now, these many years later, the mysterious oracle had indeed summoned him. He'd found the cryptic invitation on his campaign desk after yesterday's battle on the dry plains of Munda. The small scroll had laid out the particulars pertinent to meeting the guide. It was an opportunity, Caesar had thought, lost ages ago, and he'd jumped to grasp it. Still, he had viewed this oracle as just another tool with which to build his future. That illusion was now shattered. There was a deeper purpose here. "You were the boy?" he asked at last. "I was," the oracle stated. "I've been many people in the past, and if the need arises I will be in the future as well. It is my mandate to do so." Caesar leaned back into the couch's plush cushions. His mind was racing, realizing the magnitude of the opportunity now placed before him. He wished to make the most of it, but he wasn't sure how best to proceed. The old man knew this. At some point the same realization always came to those the oracle selected. This was no game, no sleight of hands, no parlor trick. This was deadly serious. "Why me?" Caesar at last was motivated to ask. "You could have chosen anyone, it seems. Why was I the one selected so long ago?" "The answer is simple, Gaius Julius," said the insightful oracle. "You are a unique specimen. Many men are ambitious, and many are lucky, but not many think as you do. It turns out that few have the wherewithal to frame the proper question." "I see," said Caesar in a quiet voice. "We've come full circle then, and now I know that it all comes down to framing the proper question properly." The old man smiled, satisfied. The state of mind was ever all important. Caesar's mind was now open and willing, and the possibilities were endless. "Then let us begin," said the Oracle of Munda.